Hello and welcome into the KE Report. Shad and Corey here as your host, and today we're getting an update on metallic minerals. Metallic minerals is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker MMG and on the OTCQB under the ticker MMNGF. And we are joined today with the president of Metallic Minerals, Scott Petsel. Scott, great to have you on the show, as always. It's been a while since we've chatted officially on the KE report here, even though we've talked at various conferences, but it's been about 6 months since we've had an update, and the company's got a lot of news out on all three projects. Just as a reminder for people listening in, the company has alluvial gold claims, which we will be kicking this off with, but also the Keno Silver Project in the Yukon, as well as the La Plata Copper and Precious Metals and Critical Minerals Project near Durango, Colorado. So, three different projects to dive into. Scott, let's kick it off with the news that you put out to the market on the 8th of October. And this talks about the drill programs you had at South Keno and your Klondike Gold. These are those alluvial properties where the company has an interesting business model in that you want to find operators to come in and mine these, and you actually hold royalties on these when you set up an operator relationship. You've done that the last couple of years. Give us an update on not just the drilling, but also the operators and just a lay of the land for folks not familiar with this angle of the business.
Yeah, well, first of all, Shad, Corey, it's great to catch up with you guys again. I know, like you said, it's been a few months and a lot has happened, and we're excited to be here and talk about it. And it's always nice just to be able to chat and catch up with you guys as well. Our alluvial royalty project in the Yukon territories is really an exciting thing for us as a revenue generator. You don't see a lot of junior exploration companies that generate revenue, and we're one of the very few in that regard. So we are the third largest holder of alluvial mining claims in the Yukon, and our Australia Creek is our primary alluvial project in the Yukon. It's 37.8 square kilometers of really prospective alluvial ground. We've had portions of this that we've leased out to operators that come in and generate, mine gold and generate a royalty for us on the nature of 10 to 15% back to us. That ultimately, as we expand this operation, will help cover G&A costs for the company. And you just don't see that very much in the industry. So what we've had to do, given the high interest in these projects during the current high gold price environment, is to provide a little bit more of a carrot at the end of the stick to add more operators to expand this royalty production. And so to do that, we have our Australia Creek project in the historic Klondike district, which is mined 20 million ounces historically since the famous Klondike gold rush. We also have alluvial claims south of our Keno Hill project, which is right next to one of the highest grade placer producing projects in the Yukon in the last 10 years. So to build that carrot and to attract more operators to those projects, we have had to do a little bit of field work, both geophysics that help outline the depth of the gravels that the mining occurs in, to help the operators understand what kind of equipment, how much equipment they would need, but also to drill some holes to verify the gold production capabilities or potential on those claims. And that's resulted in us having a lot of discussions over the last several months with potential operators to really come in and expand these operations and increase that royalty production in 2026. But we're just at the brink of wrapping up the 2025 royalty production season, and it probably will be a record year for us in terms of revenue to the company from that work.
Scott, can you just explain a little further what these potential operators would be looking for in these drill results? Since you're not really drilling to build out a resource or move through an economic study, what moves the needle for these operators to come on site and start mining some of this material?
Well, I think the key thing is they don't want it to be too deep, and they want to make sure they've got a certain amount of gold. It's just like a mining company would follow up on a hard rock property to a certain extent, but with less data involved, because the margins are, for us, we don't want to drill too many things and then find an operator to come in and generate gold and pay us a royalty, but not pay back the initial work that we did. So they're pretty accustomed to risk. They want to see presence of gold. They like to see historic production. And now in Australia Creek, which, is at a 30-kilometer long section of ground that we have under claim, was never mined historically because it was held during the main years of the Klondike Gold Rush, was held in reserve for water and power to support the floating dredges downstream. Now that we've had an operator in there for the last 2, 3 seasons that has demonstrated production, these new drill holes in Australia Creek are just a further confirmation that there is gold up and down this 30-kilometer stretch. And so that itself is validation that allows these operators to maintain more interest in garnering these claims. And the other thing that I'll mention is that there are a lot of claims that these guys have been mining on for years and years that are now starting to get tapped out. And they want to find ground. They want to find big projects where they can move a lot of dirt and make a lot of gold. And we're one of the last holdouts with this 37 square kilometer property that has the opportunity to provide big projects for them to move a lot of material.
Well, Scott, maybe just putting even a finer point on it, you have had some operators in Australia Creek the last couple seasons, and it'll be interesting to see what revenues those do generate from this year's program. But also, you have room for a number of more operators than what you've had previously. So maybe paint the big picture of where this could go if you have the claims near Dominion Creek, the Australia Creek, and some of the other openings you'd have for operators. How many operators could you have? And in a sense, how many different royalties could you have going if you're at full capacity?
Yeah, just in summary, so we've talked about Australia Creek. We've also talked about South Keno. South Keno is an area we call Granite Creek. We could have multiple operators there, let's say 2 in the next couple of years. At Australia Creek, we've got 1 current operator. We could have 10 there in the next couple of years. At Dominion Creek, another smaller block of claims that we have, we've added a second operator there that's producing now, just wrapping up for the season. And that is a static number there. So when you look at it, the idea of having 10 operators over time at Australia Creek, 2 at Granite Creek south of our Keno project, and 1 at Dominion Creek, it's a significant amount of revenue, considering that in 2023, we produced about 1,300 ounces in 21 days of production and maintained a 10 to 15% royalty on that production.
Scott, is there any potential that any of these operators would take over any of these projects rather than, it sounds like, go season to season, pay you a royalty and mine whatever they can in a relatively short period of time?
Typically, the model is that lease it, operate, pay a royalty, but there have been some significant deals done in the past. I think those of you familiar with Gold Rush, the show on Discovery Channel that Parker Schnabel is a star of. Well, Parker was an operator on our Australia Creek claims in 2023. And it's rumored he paid close to $15 million for claims on Dominion Creek that he's now mining on. So there's multiple ways to capitalize from this, and we're always working to do our best to understand the best for our shareholders in that regard.
Well, Scott, it's just an interesting angle. And as you outlined at the onset, it's unusual for a junior exploration focused company to have a revenue source. And so this could continue to grow. And I still don't think the marketplace really fully appreciates how big this could actually grow, not just to cover G&A, but eventually could be a profit center for the company. But let's shift over nearby to your Keno Silver Project. Obviously, you've had some drilling over a number of years. You put out a resource here, your first initial resource. People are always curious what kind of work is in store for the year to come. So what's going on with the Keno Silver Project?
Yeah, well, following our $8 million raise in August of this year, it was a little late for us to pull the trigger on a drill program at our Keno project for the remainder of the summer. And we decided we'd hold off and really look at potentially drilling a significant program in the spring, because this is a really important asset for us. People don't tend to realize that because we do have the alluvial portfolio, we have our Keno Silver Project, and we have what's become our flagship at the La Plata Project in Colorado. But this Keno project has 18.2 million ounces of silver in a silver lead zinc district. We're right next door to Hecla. Hecla's mining 4 to 5 million ounces a year, currently active in trying to scale up their operations as well. And we've got a bunch of targets that have been undrilled to this date. So our resource, we see that as highly expandable. It's a relatively small number in the silver resource business, but we see it as highly expandable. It was an initial resource to get us on the board, and we were able to get that resource on the board for about 18,000 meters of drilling. So for every meter of drilling that we did, we found 1,000 ounces of silver. And I think that's a pretty good success rate. And we'll look to continue that in 2026 with a really robust drill program, likely beginning in the spring, to provide some early news for our shareholders because we haven't had a lot of drill results of late to share with our shareholders.
So tying in another news release from October 21st, your work with Verify for AI assisted discovery, really building out more targets or isolating some targets using prior work that you've done and AI. Is that going to play a role in next year's drill program at that project then when it does finally come out? Will you have some of that data back in time?
It will certainly help. And yes, I believe we'll have data back from that. The Verify AI system is going to be great for us. We're working with them now to get our data into the system to allow the AI and the machine learning to occur. We've seen some early returns on that already. The beauty of the Verify AI system is that it is interactive by our team. We don't provide them with data and they spit out of their black box a target map and we say, oh, we're going to go drill that. This is a system that allows us to interact with the AI and machine learning directly, and the ability to change variables to allow us to focus on the variables that are key and to utilize that into our thinking, our work on the mapping and sampling that we're doing proactively to refine targets to the best of our ability. And we really like to be kind of cognizant of the fact that drill dollars don't come easy. We want to be very strategic with where those drill holes go. And Verify AI and the system there is transforming the way we look at that data, and we're leveraging that on our data-rich projects to make sure we're making the right calls for drilling.
Well, Scott, let's talk about La Plata in Colorado since it is the flagship for the company, not just copper, but precious metals and even some other specialty metals. I was chiding your CEO, Greg Johnson, at the Beaver Creek Convention about when you were going to start testing some of the other potential porphyry targets. As people know, these porphyry targets come in clusters. And so while the main center that you focused on thus far has been the Allard target, and that's where the resources are, and that's where the bulk of the drilling has been, there's a lot of other potential targets here, and you're also partnered up with Newmont on this, and so they have a technical committee with metallic minerals. Give us a sense of what may be in store for exploration at La Plata in the season to come.
Yeah, I think we've been very active this year with rock sampling, soil sampling, mapping. So again, this is a 44 square kilometer project, and we see it as, the overused term, but a tier one potential asset. Porphyry copper system with a 25 square kilometer footprint. We know from looking at similar models like Acadia, that is a current Newmont mine in Australia, that these deposits occur in clusters and there may be more than one. And so our work has gone out to try and delineate a number of other targets and refine those targets so that when we actually do initiate drilling in the next phase, that we're drilling the best possible holes that we can drill for the best results. And that I think is important. Again, with drill dollars being hard to come by, we know we've got a tiger by the tail here, and we want to make sure we're going to approach it and do it right and build the foundation, not only on the data, but on the community and regulatory side, to have the runway to advance this project the way we see fit. This is a significant opportunity for the company. And, currently with 1.2 billion pounds in resource, we see the potential to get that, to 2, 3, 4, 5 in the next few years with drilling. And lest I forget that there's also 17 million ounces of silver in that resource as well, and that we're about to embark on a resource update that will include platinum and palladium in that estimate.
You alluded to it there, Scott. Budget wise, if you have all these plans for next year, outside of whatever money you may generate from those other miners or the operators going on to those alluvial projects, how do you see managing your budget? You just raised $8 million through a private placement, but what does the budget look like for next year, and how do you think you'll allocate it?
Well, I think, we'll see how that develops. We're always going to be opportunistic about opportunities for new funds because our goals, our desires to drill as many meters as we can on the project are bigger than our bankroll at the moment. So we're being very careful about how we're allocating the funds and working towards building that understanding of those targets so we're really efficient with the exploration. But again, to test the number of targets that we've generated in the way that we would like to test, we may have to go out and seek more funds to do so.
Scott, just to follow up on that, since you have copper there, which is considered a strategic metal, I don't know if it's considered a critical mineral yet with the US, but it's definitely strategic. But you also have platinum and palladium, but you also have some interesting specialty metals in La Plata that don't get as much airtime. But I'm curious as to whether those would be of interest to the US government or to the state of Colorado as far as the critical minerals angle. Any potential there to raise capital in non-traditional ways?
Well, I think there very much is, and just expanding on this. So 1.2 billion pounds of copper, over 17 million ounces of silver in the resource. It's very early days. There's only been 25,000 meters drilled on the project in its entirety since the 50s. And that's only essentially on one target where we have the Allard resource area, where we have identified, 10 other porphyry centers that could be potential Allard deposits. And if you look at the price of copper, it's $5.25 here recently. It's on a heater. And, if you look at the copper gold ratio, currently around 800 pounds per ounce. Historically, that's run about 400 pounds per ounce. And on the high side, it's been 200 pounds per ounce. So we see the opportunity for copper price to really take off and go. But the beauty of this is copper is now being recommended as a critical mineral. Silver is critical. Platinum and palladium that we'll be adding to the resource is critical. And we also see vanadium, scandium, tellurium, lanthanum, and yttrium, the last two being rare earths, along with being critical minerals. So that's a really significant kind of understanding. And that was generated from the fact that the US government designated the La Plata Mountains as a critical minerals focus area. And over the past 3 years, the US government has spent $300 through a program called Earth MRI, administered by the United States Geological Survey, to advance the understanding of the critical mineral potential in the La Plata Mountains. So we've collaborated with them. I recently gave a talk to the American Association of State Geologists in San Antonio about how the USGS data has contributed to our understanding of that expanded critical mineral potential. And, the upside is this is potential byproduct material that is co-located with copper. And so as we continue to build that foundation and build an understanding of what these potential byproducts represent, along with that addition of platinum and palladium to the resource, the project is going to take on more of a profile nationally as a source of domestic critical minerals that could attract funding outside of the traditional private placement activities for the company. So we're hopeful on that. It's part of that foundation building, and we're learning more about all of those other elements and their ability to contribute to the project on a daily basis.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there, but I think that's just an interesting note to highlight for folks that may not even realize that in addition to the copper and the silver and the PGMs, that you have rare earths, that you have critical minerals, that the government is interested in this particular area and has been doing a lot of studies on it. And I picked that up in just some of our meetings and talking over the last year or so. And I think it's an interesting angle for the La Plata project, but lots going on with metallic minerals, not just in Colorado, but obviously in the Yukon with the alluvial gold projects and the royalties there and the ability to generate revenues for the company and some drilling to find new partners for next season, but also the upcoming work that'll happen in the spring at the Keno Silver Project in the Yukon. So lots of news on tap over the course of the next 12 months for the company, lots of different initiatives at all three projects. So for those of you listening in, if you want to follow along with the news, definitely click on the link below in the show notes. It takes you right over to the Metallic Minerals website, straight to their news section, where you can sign up for updates that hit your email inbox or just follow along with the news as it hits the wires. Scott, keep us posted. We'll get you back on for an update soon. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Appreciate you both. Thank you.